And we are starting off with that breaking news this morning. Anthony Bourdain has died.
Yeah, CNN, the TV network for which he works, has reported that he committed suicide and that his close friend Eric Rapere, the French chef, found him this morning unresponsive in his hotel room in Paris.
The host of CNN's Parts Unknown was in France filming an upcoming episode of the award-winning series. Best known as both a chef and a storyteller, he also hosted No Reservations on the Travel Channel for 9 seasons. Bourdain was 61 years old. Now, if you or anyone you know needs help, please don't hesitate to call the National Suicide Hotline. The number is right there on your screen. It's a fairly easy one to remember, 800-273-TALK. And so many people are in shock over the loss of Anthony Bourdain.
And this is just coming a couple of days after designer Kate Spade also died of an apparent suicide. So we want to talk about mental health and depression right now. Joining us this morning, we're happy to have on the COO of the Jordan Porco Foundation, Mr. Matthew Riley, joining us. And a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for coming on right now. Well, first of all, we've had the Jordan Porco Foundation on the show a number of times over the years, but for people who haven't seen that before, just let us know what the organization's all about.
Yeah, so we are a suicide prevention and mental health awareness organization. We concentrate primarily on the young adult population and teenagers because they're particularly vulnerable. The organization was founded after the co-founders lost their son to suicide his freshman year of college. So we're doing a lot of work in school environments, but also with community organizations as well. Try to bring awareness to the issue.
And you also lost your daughter to suicide as well. That's what got you involved here.
Yeah, that was how I became personally involved. I think it's a natural reaction for, especially any parent that's lost a child to want to get involved and make a difference and try to turn a negative into a positive. So that's what I'm hoping to do.
And before we started, I asked you if you were okay to talk about your daughter, but that's what this is all about. That's what needs to be done. People need to talk about it. People need to talk about suicide, mental health, anxiety, depression, right? That's what is really key here.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think you just hit the nail on the head. Really, we as a society have generally tended to push this topic, under the rug. And I think that has a lot to do with a fear of the subject, a misunderstanding of the subject, and all this science and all the research tells us that the right action is the exact opposite of that. So in many respects, that's what we're attempting to do at the Jordan Porco Foundation. That's what we're attempting to encourage others to do, is to talk openly about this. It's what all of the experts indicate. What's interesting is many people are fearful about talking to someone that they think might be considering suicide. The reality is it's the exact opposite. Talking to someone about whether they have this intention actually gives them the ability to open up and then can oftentimes lead to help for that individual.
It almost makes it sound like you're saying catharsis sort of helps things out, that something is building up to a head silently, but if people can give a voice to it or talk about it or just release the pressure, like it's a tea kettle a little bit, that things can settle down.
Yeah, listen, I think any opportunity to open up and talk about it can be cathartic, it can be therapeutic for an individual. But I think the very good news about it is, they can potentially get a better feel that they're being supported, that there is help available, and certainly if the individual that they're engaging with knows about where to possibly refer them, that can be exceptionally helpful to that individual.
And I wanted to ask you very quickly before we go what some of the risk factors and the warning signs are, because if there's one thing we've learned this week with the apparent suicides of Anthony Bourdain and Kate Spade, it's that being successful outwardly in your personal and professional lives
doesn't make you immune to this.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, a lot of people think that the most vulnerable among us are those that are alienated or isolated, and certainly that can be the case, but you know, it runs a broad spectrum. You can have highly successful people on the outside. You know, I know that certainly in the younger demographic, it can be the star athlete, for example, and those individuals can be struggling just as much, if not more so, than people that tend to be more isolated. So it really does run the spectrum.
And it also is a good reminder that it doesn't really just affect one socioeconomic group.
That's correct.
Or
yeah.
one, you know, gender.
There's no discrimination amongst demographic. It affects all age groups, all different demographics.
I know, and we've been reporting this morning about how suicide seems to be increasing in the United States, especially in Connecticut. And there was a statistic, I know you can't speak necessarily knowledgeably about it. It said about 54% of the suicides at this point over the last 17 years had no known mental illness associated with it. Right. I would love to know what that number really is, because I feel like the stigma about talking about it is not just suicide, it's mental health as a whole.
Absolutely, and it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, that you know, because of the stigma, and that may be an overutilized term, but because of the stigma and how it's treated in our society, there are so many more cases that are unreported because people aren't coming forward about it, and that's really what we need to change. That's one of our primary objectives.
Matthew, thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure.
With us.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure.
We do appreciate
My
it.
pleasure.
We do
Thank you.
appreciate your time.